All right, Kevin, back with you again. Here we are for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with my friend Phil. Phil, man, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, super grateful for the invitation and excited to be here as well.
Yeah, this is going to be really great. You know, Phil, you and I met through a mutual friend that he was doing this training a couple of years ago. I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago. Jesse Elder, he was doing this training, and you and I had both signed up for that training that he was doing. And over a few weeks that he was doing that, you and I just connected through that. We ended up having a conversation, becoming friends through that, and in that last couple of years, man, things were going pretty well for both of us before, but that was like, I'm trying to think, was before COVID, when he did that training before COVID even hit, is that right? Or was I can't remember.
It's like right, it might have been when it was kind of just starting to be in the kind of public awareness, but it hadn't turned into the thing that it's been the last couple of years. So
for sure. And so, yeah, a lot of interesting things have happened since then, for sure. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. And it was really cool because you mentioned to me before we started recording that, like, man, Kevin, as soon as you asked me to do this, you were like, man, I just saw this line of sight of, like, you were like, man, this is just in complete alignment. I'm looking forward to this. So that even's got me more jazzed about it. And so let's go ahead and let's start by just let you share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what motivates you to do what you do, and just kind of give people an idea of, like, who Phil is. And we'll just start there.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, Kevin. I used to have this crazy kind of marketing pitch of who I was and what I did, but I've actually kind of simplified it the last few years. So really, I mean, at the core of things, I am a marketing strategist, and right now I'm really focused on two key things: really growing two communities. One is a company I run with my partner, Rye Schwartz. It's called Empire Engineering, and we're running a program over there. Probably totally in line with everything that you believe in teach. It's called Automated Intimacy, and it's really helping people look at kind of the signals and tells in their business, and rather than kind of just running this kind of passive automated, like, let's get rich, go down on the beach and drink mojitos sort of thing. It's more like, how do we use all this technology that's available to us in a more meaningful way to create real connection? And ultimately that typically leads to much greater business success as well. So that's been a huge focus for me. And then I also serve as a growth chief with an organization called Zen Habits. Some of your listeners might be familiar with his work. A guy by the name of Leo Babauta, longtime blogger. He's been doing this since like 2007. I think he was like Times Magazine Blogger of the Year twice. So he's been around for a while. But the last couple of years, we've been growing something called the Fearless Living Academy, and it's really been helping people work through uncertainty and train in fearlessness. So it's kind of a lot of concepts rooted in Zen philosophy, but kind of with a practical modern spin. And so yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but those have kind of been the things that have me lit up and enjoying life and finding ways to really, really help people.
Awesome. And so for you personally, Phil, what jazzes you most about the work you get to do and the impact you get to have on people's lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I've always kind of been a little bit, my nickname is, people call me the Wizard, and it's funny how that evolved, because I've always been a little bit behind the curtain, and I don't really look for the limelight. I don't look for the spotlight. Even like doing interviews like this, they're not really my thing, although I've been trying to lean into it a little bit more. But what really gets me excited is when is really helping people amplify their mission, when I know it's something that's really going to change a lot of lives for the better. And so that's really it. Like, it's like helping people amplify their message when it's something that really has a lot of heart in it, that I know has the ability to, like I said, just create a ton of impact. And I love this. Actually, the person that I'll be talking about today was probably the first person to share this concept that he called at the time ripple of impact. I don't know if he came up with it or if he just shared it with me, but that's the thing I love, that idea of like, okay, can we amplify these messages so that through this we can create this impact ripple that kind of expands out and really makes a difference. So that's it, man.
That is interesting, Phil, because you and I, when it comes, you and I are just alike when it comes to that. I am kind of consider myself that's behind the scenes guy too, that gets to work with all these amazing entrepreneurs, that are making such a big impact, that already have a big footprint. And because of my skill set and my gift, I can help them make an even bigger impact. And of course, most people, never know that I was ever there or ever a part of it. And I'm totally cool with that. I don't care at all, And what I found out is that and I know I was sharing this with you before we started recording, if I work with somebody who's doing $1 million a year business versus if I'm working with somebody who's doing a 60 or $70 million a year business, the work for me is the same either way. But with the person who has the larger business, they also have more resources and are more resourceful. I can just do a whole lot more there than I can there. So I just focus on those people, and then everybody wins. And so that's really awesome. Okay, so now that we've kind of got a little bit of context set and people listening have an idea of who you are and what you do and stuff, I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of everybody listening. And so we'll start there. Have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today wouldn't even be possible if not for this person? And Phil, I'm really excited to hear your story, your experience around this.
Yeah, it's fun. So, when you first asked me this, there's more than one person that came to mind for me, but of course, for this conversation, we'll focus on one. But I 100% resonated with it because it's, as I think I mentioned to you before this call, it's like complete line of sight from where I am standing here, sitting, talking to you today, and where I kind of made some huge pivots and shifts in my personal life and my business and everything that's happened. It's all come down to relationship and a couple key conversations that just, you follow the chain back, from one person to the next, and everything just kind of spun out of there, including my, my current business partners. So yeah, hit me, tell me how you want me to share.
Tell the story. However, let's go back and to the time, when did this relationship begin? How long ago, Phil?
At this point, I think we're talking, I start to lose track of time, but probably it's 6 or 7 years. So not a hugely long time ago, but long enough that I've been able to do a few things since then. But essentially, like, where this all started was I spent many years in kind of corporate. I worked as a product manager for a company called Intuit, software company out in California, and did that for a number of years.
People use their software stuff.
Yeah. So it was fun, and then during that time, I had a lot of really interesting clients. Like, I was working directly with Tesla and Microsoft and PlayStation. Actually, one of my favorite moments was I got to go out to the Tesla factory, and they had a private race car driver. We would get to do like burnout tests on their racetrack. But that's kind of a side note there. But anyway, I was kind of getting bored. Honestly, I was just feeling a little bit like, I wonder what's beyond this whole corporate gig. And at the time, my wife was starting to run a practice. She had opened a practice in Boston. She's an audiologist. And she had started to run that private practice. And I was like, I wonder what this entrepreneur thing is all about. I think I should just like jump ship and see if I can help her grow this thing. And I was like, I can always go back, right? Like, what's the risk? It's a nice paycheck, but I can get it back if I need to. So I did that. I jumped ship, and that started kind of doing some really interesting work where, we were working with hearing patients, people that, have hearing loss, And at the time I was like, I think we could really grow this practice using Facebook. You know, Facebook was kind of becoming a thing. People were basically saying that it wasn't, you know, for seniors, nobody was on there. Short story, in a very quickly, I kind of started to grow this consulting business that was starting to dwarf or make our practice look small in comparison revenue wise. And it was around that time that this story begins. And so hopefully I didn't take too long to get there. But when I had left corporate, I was kind of flailing for a minute. I was like, you know, how do I kind of was having a bit of an identity crisis. I didn't really know what this whole entrepreneur thing was about. I didn't have all these colleagues and people to talk to anymore, like how to make sense of this, how to manage my time, you know, how to deal with stress of like new issues I wasn't accustomed to. And so I was just like looking for resources for that. And it was funny. I was just on my iPad one morning and I found this like secret link. It was probably just some well marketed event, but it was like this event out in Boulder, Colorado. You may have heard of it. It's called 212. Adam Bourne runs it, Bourne Fitness. Okay. But Pen Name Consulting also is the name of the consulting company. But it was like 50 people were coming to this thing. It was like 12 grand for like a 2-day event. But it was like the 3 top mentors were Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday, and Noah Kagan from AppSumo, and then a bunch of other people. And I was like a long-term Tim Ferriss fan, and I was like, I've got to be there. I was like, this is like, I need to put myself in a room with a bunch of people that are way smarter than me, and you know, playing a bigger game. I was like, if I'm going to figure this out, so I did that. I was one of 50 people that went to that event, and it was incredible. Like even the people that were like my peers, like sitting at the table, were like, you know, like really doing big business. And so at one of the breakfast tables, I met a coach by the name of Phil Durley. And, you know, he kind of was the first person that kind of opened my eyes to this possibility of actually having a coach and what the impact of that could be. But it's funny, he was like, I can't work with you. I'm full. Like, I'm just like, I can't take any more clients right now. And that, but it was so funny because at the time I was like, I really want to work with this guy. But he ended up introducing me to a colleague of his, who's now a dear friend. His name's Mark Angelo Coppola. And he became my coach. And he was really the one that kind of really, I mean, I give him I give myself credit, but I give him a ton of credit for arming me with the tools and the confidence to kind of make big moves. So like, as I mentioned, that consulting company that I started, even that, like I started coaching with him and I was like hesitant to do it. It was all like concepts that I was running in my own business. And I was having success with them, but I was like, I don't know, it was a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was like, can I actually get these results for other people? And he was the one that just like kept encouraging me. He's like, you got to do this. You got to do this. I was like, I don't know. Finally said yes, started taking clients. And yeah, he was the one that helped coach me to the height of that business, which, you know, where I was getting to 6-figure months, which with just me and a VA. So it's kind of
That's
insane.
awesome.
And,
That's awesome.
And so I'm going to pause there and see what else you know, there's so many like other things that kind of experiences that are tied to that. But yeah, I'll pause there and see what seems most useful for you and listeners.
Well, so let's just dig into a little bit of that, and just like, you know, so I'll just ask you, you know, what are some of the really, you know, the most powerful things that like stick out in your mind that transpired as a result of your relationship with Mark and the working relationship that the two of you had together?
Yeah, I mean, so one result was definitely, like I said, just the confidence to really get that business going in the first place and just kind of put myself out there and charge some prices that were completely warranted. And looking back now, it's like, it's actually a steal. But at the time I was like, wow, these are like, this doesn't feel comfortable. So just like,
did it seem like a lot to you at the time, Phil? It seemed like, you know, were you quoting prices that you're like, oh man, I don't know.
It's funny. Like, it's probably for a lot of people who are going into consulting or financing, it's already pretty high. But at the time, my first price out the gate was $2,500 a month for consulting, and
Okay.
yeah, at the time that felt super high, super scary. I was like, am I worth this? Will people pay this? That sort of thing. Although, yeah, so that was kind of the first hurdle, and then it was really just around how to continue. He was really useful in helping me figure out how to start to productize that offer, and ultimately that initial offer that started at about $2,500 a month became a $18,000 offer that was returning huge, like at least 10x kind of ROI for clients that I was running it with for a couple of years. So yeah, that whole process of how that offer evolved and ultimately got to that point where I felt comfortable selling at that level, which yeah, I give them a lot of credit for helping me get there. I had a lot of mind drum around that. So there's that whole theme, and then the other big one was just like network expansion. So the other thing that Mark did, which is incredible, and I keep hoping he'll do it again. He ran this mentorship school called Superhero Academy.
Okay.
And he held these 2-week-long kind of boot camp style masterminds in Costa Rica, and sort of like you, just like attracted like really, really high quality, like heart-centered type of people that were there to have a more like a deeper conversation than just like, hey, what's my bottom line? How do I make more money? It was like, yeah, what are we here to do? Who are we here to serve? Like, what are the bigger issues, and why is this work meaningful? And so those two events, that I went to after I met him, hugely impactful. Like essentially all of my current business partners that I have now, so Ryan and my Empire Engineering, I met at the first of those two events. I ended up hosting, based on kind of learning from him how he was running these events when I was still running that business for private practice owners. I ended up hosting my own events in Costa Rica, kind of following a similar blueprint. And so that was a huge success that kind of ties back to having met him. And then a lot of the guests and that came to my events because I learned how to do that. Like Leo, for example, who's one of my dear friends and partners now in Zen Habits, was one of my workshop guests for those doctors. And that's how we ended up. I knew him from afar because like I knew him as a blogger from like 2006, and he was, him and like Tim Ferriss are good buddies, and they were like my heroes on the online world. So I asked, from learning to do these events, I asked him to come be a workshop guest for me, just thinking he was going to say no, and magically he said yes. And then we became buddies, became business partners. So it's just like this beautiful mix up of cross-pollination and just like little micro conversations that have just led down these kind of really interesting paths. And so, yeah, it's really fun to look back and think about that, because in the moment when you're having a conversation, especially if you're just very present to the conversation, it's like you're not really thinking about these things. And
that's right.
It's probably better that you're not, because if you are, things start to get constrained and it becomes calculated, and it's not, you lose a bit of the magic anyway. But if you're open and you're just present, you're not thinking that way. But it is amazing to look back and just be like, wow, how did this all just all together perfectly in a way that you could really never imagine. So,
I don't usually interject a whole lot in these interviews, but you just shared something so dang valuable. I want to make sure it doesn't go unnoticed, because I've been in a ton of like mastermind groups and entrepreneurial networking environments over the years, and it's very interesting how you're in a networking environment and you might be talking with somebody, but yet they're not totally present, like you were just talking about. They might have come up and even started talking to you, but as you're talking, they're kind of like just looking around, scanning the room for who else is there, or whatever, and they're not present. And the thing is, they're there because they want to network, they want to make connections, they want to grow their business, they want to make more money, all of that kind of stuff.
They're on a script.
Yeah. But yet like you said, you when you look back on these key conversations that you had over the years, that, you know, the first conversation you had where you're just talking and you're getting to know each other, and like, you know, and they're sharing with you, and you're like genuinely curious, genuinely interested, you're asking clarifying questions on what they say. And of course, when we do that, we give people a pretty incredible gift that a lot of times they don't get, which is we give them the gift of feeling seen, heard, and understood, you know, and that's how we connect with them. And just by being present, like you said, and
Yeah.
it's huge. And look
Yeah.
what comes from that.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful. And you know, that's, that was one of the things that I really loved about the format of these events in Costa Rica. I mean, again, like maybe this is just, I guess this is what I do, and it's probably a good thing. I at the end, by the time I was in the middle of those events, I again was like, I'm out of my league. These people are all playing a bigger game than I am. I'm feeling stretched. But what was really cool about those events is they made the focus so much so about the people that it wasn't really until like pretty far into the 2 weeks that I even knew like what some of the really cool things that these people were doing, because it was like we were just connecting as like humans. We were like hiking around in the jungle. We were like doing these things, and then, you know, we become friends. And then later I'm like, oh my God, like
You do
this
what?
is insane. You've sold 2 startups for like $100 million each. Like, what the heck? Like, you know, that sort of thing. And then it's just like, it's such a different thing that then when you go into it, like you said, it's like almost like wanting to get something from this. It's like, I know you sold your company for 100 million. I want you to teach me how to do it. Right. There's like that graspiness versus when you just like connect, and then you're like, oh, this is cool. Like, we get each other more on a human level, and maybe we'll do business, maybe we won't. And it really doesn't matter, you know, because there's a little bit of a deeper bond there. So yeah, I really appreciate that about those experiences. And it's one of the things I appreciated about everything that I've learned about you and your work, because I know that you shared that feeling, and it's very deeply, you know, rooted in the experiences you create.
Yeah, I have, you know, I've definitely had to grow as a person, and because, you know, a lot of the people that I get to serve now and work with are people that, quite honestly, I used to put them on this pedestal because I'm like, man, they've done all these amazing things, and I've never had a business where I've done business at the level that they have, you know. And so, but through just doing what I do and having conversations with them, come to find out that, you know what, yep, they are pretty much world class at what they do. They've done some amazing stuff, but they're people just like me. They put their pants on the same way, and at any given time, they got very real problems that they're dealing with, that they're looking for solutions. They got opportunities they want to take advantage of, but they don't quite have all the clarity they need. And they don't have egos. They just want to connect with like-minded people, and they want to make a bigger impact in this world, you know. And so I just want to remind people here that this whole conversation, we have been talking about one person, this gentleman, Mark. We have been talking about one person and all the stuff that has come from that, all not just for you personally, Bill, but for how many lives have been impacted because you and Mark met. How many more relationships have come because you and Mark met. And my goal for this podcast right from the get-go has always been, yes, I want to give people like yourself, entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, the opportunity to share your story and your experience around this, to honor this one person, which in today's case is Mark, but also for the entrepreneurs, for the CEOs, for the founders that would be listening in on this. I want to inspire and motivate them to place a more intentional focus on creating and more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their life. That's the whole purpose of all of this. And Phil, we definitely accomplished that today. So thank you so much. And any last words you want to share before we call it a wrap for today?
No, I mean, I think what you've just said there is the message. It's funny because I coach, in this Fearless Living Academy. I coach a lot of entrepreneurs on their marketing and growth, and people always ask me kind of like, well, how have you been able to do these certain things? And basically everything that we've talked about today, I that's what I tell them. I'm like, that's the cheat code right there. It's like, stop worrying about all this other stuff and just get out there, put yourself in the room with interesting people, and
Yeah.
kind of drop the stories and just connect as humans. And if you can do that, everything else will just kind of take care of itself. And so
yeah,
that would be my message for anybody listening is make those investments, and keep it light. Don't go into it expecting too much or too little, and the magic will kind of show up when it needs to.
yes, it will. Yes, it will. Well, Phil, once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation, to do this interview. I really appreciate what came from this. And it was great to be able to honor Mark in this way as well.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to check out his work, it's superheroacademy.com.
You know what? Thank you because I usually always ask that. It's like, so Superhero Academy, and then you had brought up something else too. The other thing, how can people find more about that as well?
Oh, so my stuff?
Yes.
What you're talking about? Yes, I mean, easiest thing, you could just check out my site. It's philippowis.com. That's pretty easy. If you're curious about the marketing growth stuff, I'm over at automatedintimacy.com. Those would probably be the two I would check out. And I'd love to share those with anyone that's interested.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that, because I was so dang involved in the conversation that I'm like, I just, because I always ask that at the end of every single interview. So,
yeah.
Well, Phil, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for thinking of me. So it's been fun.
Bet.